Welcome to Staffing Stories, hosted by Andy Moss. Andy has been in the staffing industry for over 25 years, first as a recruiter, then eventually an account manager and business owner. This is the podcast where we sit down with fellow staffing owners to get the real stories of the successes, the failures, and the lessons learned along the way.
Welcome back to Staffing Stories. I'm your host, Andy Moss, and I've got a special guest, Mr. Chris Johnson from CrossMed Healthcare. And, you know, there's one name that kept on popping up with a couple people I talked to say, you need to talk to Chris. You need to talk to Chris. And you must be an energetic guy because everybody says, oh, he's a great guy. He's a great guy. So why don't you introduce yourself to all those that are out there?
I appreciate that. Yeah, I paid them all to say that. So I'm glad they're following through.
You've got a big following.
Yeah, so my name is Chris Johnson. I'm the CSO over here at CrossMed. I spent the first, about 14, 15 years of my career at Medical Solutions, which is an incredible company. I learned so much, had some fantastic leaders and mentors there, and decided about 3 years ago to the date to join Bridget Weber, our CEO, and see if we could start something on our own. And CrossMed is started at that time. I mean, they had started about 6 months prior to that when Bridget came over. And so she started in February of 2020. I started in September of 2020, and here we are today. So it's been a crazy ride.
So you started right in the middle of the pandemic.
We did. Yeah. I mean,
was that planned or was that
it was a timing thing for sure. I mean, I would say that we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into, but it was a fantastic time to start a healthcare staffing company in certain regards and cause some pain in other regards, right? I mean, we knew that what we were experiencing at that time was not sustainable, and that there was going to be the other side of that as well. And when that was going to happen, we weren't 100% sure. And we tried to prepare for that as much as we possibly could. But I don't think there's anybody that can say they were fully prepared for what the pandemic brought and then post-pandemic as well.
Well, you're talking about like growing up quick. I mean, that's, I would assume drinking from a fire hose when you're
correct.
All of a sudden you're starting a new business, which is hard. And I've done it. And then all of a sudden on top of that, you deal with a pandemic that deals with medical and the needs there. I mean, gosh, I'm sure there's a lot of lessons that you would probably go back and do things different.
Oh man. I mean, that is 100% accurate. I was talking to someone the other day and I said, I was underqualified. There's no doubt about it. Right. So you're talking about drinking out of a fire hose, not only just it being a pandemic, but running a business, learning how to run a business the right way. And the side of it, the behind the scenes side of it that I never really had a lens into until I started here at CrossMed. We've got some, our investors are incredible and thank God they're patient with us because we hit some very good times right out of the gates and we hit some struggles as well. I think one of the biggest things I learned is just personnel, employees and what to value and how to create some structure and accountability without overdoing it, without hovering and without, creating kind of a suffocating feeling as well.
I know when I started M-Force, there's not a playbook someone drops on my desk that says, hey, here's how to run a business. Because I was a sales guy, recruiter, fairly successful in that. But the business piece was, I mean, I still say today, I learn every day. I hire people way smarter than me in roles that they are responsible for, not me.
Yeah. So I received a piece of advice from a mentor of mine before I came over to CrossMed, and they said, hire people that are more talented and smarter than you are. And I said, well, that's not going to be a challenge of mine. That'll be an easy box to check right there. But I think that the thing that I struggled with for the longest time, and this was same guy told me the same thing, and I still struggle with this a little bit today, to be quite honest with you, but he said, you've got to create opportunity, culture, and engagement, but you can't make people happy, right? And at the end of the day, if you can go to bed at night and you feel very confident that you're creating opportunity, that the culture is a very positive and an engaging culture and people have a voice, then you're doing your job. And so that was great advice, but I didn't know how good of advice it was until, over the last year or so, when I just keep reiterating that in my head and going through that conversation. And he nailed it. He knows me very well, and he knew that I was going to struggle with that. And I really did.
Well, it's interesting when I hear you say you're talking to people. When you have mentors that are willing to walk alongside you, it's so important, but you have to be opening to listening to them. Because I had business partners that I leaned on, and I could talk to, and there's plenty of other staffing owners that in the community that really wanted to help me.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was a closed-minded to it and I wouldn't listen, then that would be a problem. But it sounds like you had that and you listened.
Yeah, I mean, I can't ask our sales managers and our recruiters and client managers and everybody in the organization to take coaching if they don't see me take coaching myself. I think mentorship is incredibly critical, and I will take all the mentorship, all the advice that I can. I mean, I will never turn it down. The challenge is, how do you make it your own, right? How do I understand what worked for somebody else and how they did it worked for them, and I need to pull some of that and say, okay, how can I make this my own? How can I make this important to CrossMed, and then push it forward? I think that the moment we stop trying to learn and wanting to learn, it doesn't matter how high you get, it doesn't matter what your role or your title is. If you stop learning, in my opinion, you're dead. So I think that I think it's understanding what a quality mentor is versus just, advice, right? I think that I really try to surround myself with people who have been there, have done it, high character, high integrity people that have the same type of vision and focus, but just may get there a little bit different. I think it's important to surround yourself with those type of people.
But they really don't have to be from the staffing world. I mean,
No.
Some of my best mentors were guys that ran a mortgage group, bank, another real estate.
Yeah.
I mean, because you can learn. I mean, business is business, but I would just shadow what you just said. Listen, be coachable. That's the key thing I take.
Right. Well, I think you're right. I think sometimes when you focus just on people inside the industry, that we still have a little bit tunnel vision there.
Yeah.
And so it's not just people in this industry. I think you nailed it. I think that's critical to get perspective that's outside the lens of just healthcare staffing. So
let's rewind a little bit. Before you got into this crazy world of recruiting and stuff, walk us how you chose this industry, or how it chose you, maybe the question.
Sure. Yeah. So I wasn't blessed with a ton of gifts in a bunch of different areas. God gave me the gift of gab, right? And the ability to relate to others. So I worked a lot of different sales jobs. I worked some in Denver, Colorado, here in Omaha, Nebraska. I worked in Baltimore, Maryland. I mean, I was always trying to find somewhere to call home. And a buddy of mine had worked in the industry here in Omaha, and he got me an interview with Medical Solutions. And they were kind enough to take a chance on me. I fell in love with the industry right away, right? Because I felt like a consultant versus a sales guy. A lot of sales positions out there. You better believe in what you're selling, and if you don't believe in what you're selling, then you're stuck in the mud, right? I don't feel like I was selling as a recruiter. If anything, I was trying to give them an idea to the man that I am and who they're going to take this journey with. Not everybody liked that. Some did. I had some success as a recruiter, but I also took recruiting as something that for me was kind of like sports, kind of like growing up in sports, right? Yeah. So was never the most athletic, didn't have the highest vertical. I'm vertically challenged as well. So I used effort and time in the gym, time in the weight room. And that's what I saw recruiting as. I know that's kind of a little bit of a meathead, but recruiting for me was all out effort. If I could outwork the competition, then I had a fighting chance at this.
Yeah.
If I could take all the coaching that I was getting and put it into play. And if these nurses or healthcare professionals, if they truly believed that we were going along this journey together and I was never going to leave them high and dry.
Yeah.
So there were some fundamentals that just really, I was addicted to the effort. I was addicted to the industry. I felt like I was making an impact in healthcare as well. I felt like we kind of get lost in translation a little bit, where we don't realize when we're staffing some of these healthcare professionals, we might be saving a unit from having to shut down. We might be providing the nurse to patient ratios at a facility that someone else's family members in that hospital, and now they get the appropriate care. I think sometimes we lose sight of that. And it was really important for me to understand that what we did was having an impact in healthcare.
Well, the one thing I remember when someone talked to me early on in my career was, your competition works 8 to 5. What you do before 8 and after 5 is going to set you apart.
That's right.
And I got in early, I stayed late, and it's true. The calls that I made after 5, people were home, and I got them on the line, and
right.
The calls before work or the research I did before work set my day up. And that sticks with me. And people talk about all the flexibility we have right now. Flexibility doesn't mean anything, but you still have to work. And that's stuck with me. It's very much like a sports,
Yeah.
And I love that. So you're the chief sales officer. Walk me through, a corporation like your size. I always like to try to get behind the curtain here, the thinking. What does a company like yours think about when they think about sales, marketing? Kind of what are you tackling right now?
I think for us, we're a pretty young company, right? I always tell people, and maybe this isn't the right way to say it, but when you look at some of the big dogs, we're kind of lint in their belly button. That's the way I see CrossMed, right? And the most important thing for me when we're hiring, I think it starts there. I think it starts with hiring the right people. I can tell you all the mistakes that we've made as a company that I've made in my role. One thing that I'm extremely proud of is we have an incredible group of people that are very, very high character people. And I think it starts there, right? We have an incredible marketing team. We have a lot of the right people in the right place. But at the end of the day, the frontline people are going to be your recruiters and your client managers. And when you have people that are very, very driven, they work very, very hard, but they're very high character. That's marketing right there for CrossMed. That's what people's impression that they're going to get on CrossMed is who they're talking to on the other end of that phone. And so it's critical that we get the right people in the right seats. I think that's priority number one. The second piece of that is we don't have to be pioneers in technology, but we do have to be on the forefront, and we invest heavily in technology. We've got Sarah Winters is Winters is maiden name there. She's our chief marketing officer, and she's next level. We are incredibly blessed to have her. What she does on the marketing side of things is very, very special. She understands it. She understands the target market. She understands the client side and the healthcare professional side. And so we invest heavily in the right people that make sure we're doing the right things to get CrossMed's name out there.
Yep.
It's one thing, we're in Omaha, Nebraska, which is kind of tabbed as the Silicon Valley of healthcare staffing. There's a lot of agencies here in Omaha. So it's really important for us to have a good reputation in the community here as a company that invest heavily in their people, that invest heavily in leadership, right? Leadership is probably the biggest hot topic for me. That's the one thing that I am incredibly, incredibly passionate about, is putting the right people in the right places. But then behind the scenes, Bridget Weber, our CEO, is incredible with technology and processes and operations side. And Sarah does a fantastic job on the marketing side. And so it's very important that we do have the reputation externally, which is who we are internally. That's really important to me, that we're always going to do things the right way. We're not going to be perfect, but we are going to handle ourselves and carry ourselves with integrity and high character.
One of the slogans we have is make it simple, make it easy, make a difference. Yeah. We want to make it simple for our customers. We want to make it easy for our clients that are contractors. But at the end of the day, we have to make a difference in both of them.
Absolutely.
And we have that on the walls. We live by it. And when we stop thinking like that, I can see it in a person when they stop thinking like that.
Yeah.
And then they're not making it simple. They're not making it easy. And they're certainly not making a difference.
Right.
That is huge for me, because it's not what you did for me last year. It's what you're doing for me now. And everybody should be striving to get better and better at their job.
Right.
But having good people around you is key. So I love to hear that. And, where is some areas that you said, okay, man, I really screwed up. If I had a redo button, I'd love to hit it here. What would that be?
Accountability. I think that's the one word that really sticks out to me. We've done a lot of work in the last 6 months to truly embrace and understand what accountability means to CrossMed. Look, in the middle of the pandemic, accountability was kind of that word that floated around, but it was really hard because there were bullets flying left and right. It was just chaos every single day. So accountability became difficult, right? And then post-pandemic, I think we suffered from that. We suffered from me not getting in front of that earlier. What does it mean for our sales managers to be accountable? What does it mean for our recruiters to be accountable and our client managers to be accountable? What is the CrossMed way? What are our non-negotiables, right? What is the fundamentals of who we want to be as a company? And hindsight, I wished I had done a much better job of getting in front of that a heck of a lot earlier. Yeah. I think, I don't think it was necessarily intentional, but I think that kind of took a back seat during the pandemic. Had I really gotten in front of that accountability during the pandemic, I feel like we'd be in a little bit better position today. And so it's also being proactive when you see these things, not so retroactive or reactive, right? You can feel, I could feel it, and I hesitated to make some change. Because of all the different changes that were happening in the industry. I didn't want to pile on to that. And I wish I would have trusted my gut a little bit more earlier on and said, like, this is going to be an issue if we don't get in front of it now. And that's one thing that I think that looking back, if I could have done a better job of getting in front of that earlier, I think we'd be in a little bit, different spot today.
I just interviewed last week a guest that implements EOS, and one of the things when we implemented EOS was huge about the accountability chart. We don't call it job descriptions. It's like a list of what you're accountable for, because there's a difference between what you're responsible for and what you're accountable for.
Right.
And a lot of people don't get that. You may be responsible, but someone's accountable for it.
Yep.
So we use that as a job description. This is what you're held accountable to, and that's your job.
Yeah.
There's no fluff around it. It's just, these are the things that
this is it.
This is it. So we try to be very clear there. But like you, I did my business 6 or 7 years before I implemented something like that. So I had a struggle to find that as well. But having it in writing right there in their face is really helpful.
Yeah. I think the other thing that played a factor that we don't have a remote presence. I don't hire remotely, and we don't allow people to work remotely. I mean, we're very flexible. Don't get me wrong. People have the ability to work from home, and if it's necessary, then we're flexible with it. But I am so big on real-time training, real-time coaching, learning from one another, the collaboration piece. But that we're few and far between, right? We're the exception to the rule. Most companies here in Omaha, not just in healthcare staffing, but just in general, are remote. And I understand it. And I'm not saying that that's a bad way to go. It's just not who we are. Well, so when all of your competitors or the other companies in town have that remote presence, I was very cautious of making sure that this office didn't suffocate people, that we're not suffocating. And unfortunately, I think at the time I confused that with accountability.
Yeah.
And so I kind of hesitated to create too much accountability because I didn't want that to suffocate people. And at the end of the day, it's no different than coaching my son and daughter's team or being coached myself. I think everybody responds to accountability. Everybody wants that structure, even if they don't think they do. They respond to structure. And so, how do we create some structure, but also understand that I want people to be their genuine selves. I want them to be raw. I want them to be exactly who they are. Just understanding what that accountability and structure means to CrossMed and how do we make those two fit together.
It's just great nuggets there. And then, a question I have is, if you were talking to a young Chris these days, about his or her career, what would you tell that young person coming out of college?
I say you've got a lot to learn, for one. I would say, I get asked this question a lot. I think it's a great question because, first of all, I would say find a mentor. Find a great mentor, right? I was blessed. I got super lucky at Medical Solutions. You're looking at some of those big dogs that are still there, the Craig Myers of the world, the Joel Trombleys of the world, the Travis Powers of the world, Pat Berry's. Those guys they helped me find out, who I was, not only as a great, but as a man, right? As a husband, as a father. And so I would say, man, I try to understand what discipline, what accountability, and what work ethic means to you. The earlier you can figure that out, Chris, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah.
And I looked at my time early on as a recruiter, and a lot of the fundamentals that make a great recruiter, I kind of fought that. I kind of fought those things, that discipline and the consistency with some of the things that needed to be done. And I looked at the guys that I was surrounding myself with, and I said, man, why are they so much better than me? I don't feel like they're better than me, but man, they're sure producing at a different rate than I am. And I looked at them, and they embraced it. They just embraced who they needed to be every single day. They didn't fight it. They just said, if I do this, and this, and I have the level of success that's in front of me, right? And so when it finally dawned on me, like, man, quit fighting it and just embrace it and be that guy. And then once you understand what that looks like, then you can pour gas on that fire, and then you can go. And once I figured that out, it was kind of a game changer for me, right? And so that's what I would challenge myself, is to understand at an earlier age that you're capable of doing anything, but you've got to have discipline, structure, consistency, and work ethic.
Well, the big thing I am tasked with is, like, when I've talked to young people, is like, you've got to be coachable, and you've got to learn how to talk to people.
Absolutely.
Our business is not these things anymore.
I agree.
It is face to face, like me and you right now, having a conversation. And I struggle with this with my own son.
Yeah.
Who is, he would rather text all day long. And I was like,
right.
Hey, you've got to be able to, carry a conversation. And I worry about some of our young people coming out of school these days, is because they can't do it.
Yeah. I have a love-hate relationship with texting. I'll tell you that. I understand it's necessary at times, but I can't tell you how many times I've sat in front of a group of recruiters and said, I did not hire you because of your thumbs. Yeah. I hired you because of your ability to create value and build genuine relationships over the phone. And I understand that the world of technology is changing, but I've also talked with so many nurses that still want that relationship, and that relationship is a critical piece to what we do. Yes. The technology that is coming into this, that's flooding into this industry, is not to replace a recruiter. It's to help a recruiter. It's to make a recruiter more efficient.
Absolutely.
But nothing will replace that conversation. Nothing will replace that conversation. And we get too caught up in communicating via text, and then you lose all of your value. And I know there's a lot of healthcare professionals out there that are working with a number of different recruiters. And so texting is just easier. But I'm not going to be okay with that. I will never be okay with that, right? I need them as a healthcare. If you're a traveler, man, I would want to know who I'm signing up with to travel across this country. Do I have a connection there? Do I trust who I'm working with?
Yeah.
And the same thing as a recruiter, right? These nurses do not have to work with you. And I'm just saying nurses, these healthcare professionals do not have to work with you, and you certainly do not have to work with them. Yeah. We've got to make sure that this is the right fit for both of them. You can't do that over text message.
Well, I tell everybody, it's like, I don't care if you smoke signals, texting, whatever, to get them on the phone.
Right. Absolutely.
But you text all you want, but you're going to have a phone call.
Absolutely.
And you're going to meet them if you can, because the worst thing I want to do is place somebody in Knoxville, Tennessee, and that person say, have you met this person? And I have to sit here and go, no.
Yeah.
It's just unacceptable.
I agree. I completely agree.
But we're in office too, just like you said. I was literally 1 month of pandemic. I sat at home, and then we're all back.
Brutal.
And I'm in
absolutely brutal
state, but
yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about family and
Sure.
work balance. How do you do that?
That's an ongoing battle, right?
It's hard as a leader of an organization to. There are times where you have to pick and choose, I would assume.
Absolutely. Without a doubt. Both of my kids, I'll start with my kids. They mean everything to me, right? My son is 9 and my daughter is 12, and I still coach them in all of their sports. I don't know if that's a good thing for them, but I like to do it. I enjoy it. But, and then my wife is unbelievable. The support that from coming from her side, this wouldn't be possible without her support. And she also takes the grunt of it too, right? So if it's a good day, she's going to hear it. If it's a bad day, she's going to hear it. But she's my sounding board, and she is also one of my mentors, because she's certainly not going to tell me what I want to hear. She's going to tell me what I need to hear. I think my biggest struggle, Andy, with that is not taking work home. If there's something about the business or there's something about personnel that is eating at me, my kids don't deserve that, and my wife doesn't deserve that.
I think that's a struggle we're all going to deal with as owners, practitioners in our business, because we live it every day and it's passionate to us. And that's why I tell my kids, like, if I'm upset or down, I was like, hey, Dad's passionate about what he does.
Yeah.
I hope the job that you guys find in the future, that you can have that passion, because that means you care.
Right.
Yeah, I have had a bad day and I should have brought it home, but I'm okay with them seeing the raw emotions of what we do.
I agree.
And that's, I've got 3 boys in college. I'm trying to prepare those boys to be men, and they're at almost working age. They are working age.
Yeah.
So all of them are my cleaning crew in my office. So they've cleaned this bathroom for 10 years.
Right.
So it's just, they know how to work, but working for someone else is what I don't want to give them a bag of poo.
Right. Right.
I don't want to do that to the other person that manages them.
I think you're right. I talk to my wife, and I talk to our kids. We're very real with our kids. I'm going to be I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, because the road that they have in front of them is not easy.
No.
And that's for both Haley and Jace. They've got a tough road ahead of them, and I need them to understand that I believe in them. I believe that the 2 of those kids are very, very special, right? I know that's Dad talking, but I truly believe that. But nothing will come to fruition without work, without putting time in. Anything that's worth doing is not going to be easy. I know I talk about mentors a lot, but one of my favorite sayings, one of my favorite quotes was from Andy Frisella. But a buddy of mine rocked my world one day, and I was telling him, I said that the quote is that motivation is a fleeting feeling, right? I have a recruiter come in here, I have a sales manager come in here, and I can get them fired up. I love getting people fired up. But the reality of it is they got to go back and sit in the cube, and 5 minutes later, they're no longer motivated. So when that feeling of motivation is gone, you have to develop the discipline to do the things you need to do when you don't want to do it.
Yep.
And so I was talking to my buddy of mine about that, and he said, "Do you do that at home?" And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" He's like, "When you get home, you empty the tank at work. You give everything you have to the people at work. Do you do the same thing at home? So do you have the discipline to do the things you need to do at home when you don't want to do it?" And I was like, "Man, no, I don't. And that needs to change." Right. So when I get home and little man wants to go out and throw the football and I'm exhausted, you get your butt up and you go out there and you throw the football with him. When Haley wants to show me, what she's doing at school, or she wants to show me whatever it is that's important to her at that time, that's got to be equally as important to me. And it has nothing to do with, am I tired? Am I preoccupied with work? Like, they get the best version of me when I get home. And that's tough. I mean, I'm not perfect at that at all. I'll tell you that right now. That's a work in progress as well.
Managing a house is way harder than managing my office.
I agree. I agree with that 1,000,000%. Yeah.
Hey, this has been a great conversation. A lot of great things here. I always end it with my guests. Okay, if you're streaming Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, what's the show you're watching?
Oh man.
See it.
Okay, so we live in Nebraska, so now that college football is here, I surround myself with Husker football. that is, I'm not saying that's a good thing right now, right? But I think we're pointed in the right direction with Coach Rule. I'm kind of cheesy, brother. I love the cop shows, the Chicago PD, the FBI. I'm a dork. I just love geeking out on that stuff. One thing that my wife and I are committing to is we really want to get into Yellowstone. We're like 17 years behind everybody else, but I really want to watch Yellowstone.
It's a good one.
So, what's yours? What are you saying?
I'm a Star Wars nut. Anything kind of sci-fi. I mean, that's for me kind of my vice. But I have a daughter who's 6 who I am watching a ton of Disney. So I think tonight is Disney night because the Mermaid is on Disney Plus. So I'm going to be watching Little Mermaid.
I love it. We're still big into Avengers, man. So I can't get enough of the Avengers stuff. So
you got prime time coming into Nebraska this week.
We do. We do. I'm not going to give anybody any material. What I'll tell you is I hope Nebraska plays a fantastic game. We got to cut down on some turnovers. We got to find our offense. But look, I'm very confident that we're going to handle business on Saturday.
Well, I look forward to that email next week, and I would love to see the
yes, sir.
Rule put a statement win on somebody.
That would be great. We need one. We haven't had one in a while.
All right. Well, hey, it's nice to talk to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on Staffing Stories, and we really appreciate it.
I really appreciate you having me, man. I really do. I enjoyed my time, and it's always great to talk to you.
Okay. Hang on.
Thanks for tuning into the episode. Staffing Stories is brought to you by 3D-IQ. We are the future of staffing sales. Our solutions are designed to supercharge your sales and 3x placements, all without ever leaving Bullhorn. Direct market, deliver talent, and drive sales with our all-in-one tool designed for the modern recruiter. Visit 3diq.com/stories to learn more. Find Staffing Stories on LinkedIn, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts.